Hey everybody, it's Don. I'm joining you pretty late in the day on August 19th, 2024, right in the midst of harvest season from my backyard to talk about peppers. So let's go. Alright, so I like peppers. A lot of people like peppers. I like sweet peppers, I like hot peppers, and a lot of people do, right? And to the extreme even. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about peppers. Talk about what species of peppers there are out there that you can grow or buy in stores, and what makes them special and makes them unique from one another. So in front of me I have a display of peppers, some of which we've grown here in the backyard and some of which I've acquired or we've acquired from stores that range on the Scoville heat units from very mild, 0, up to several 100,000 units on the Scoville heat scale. So first of all, let's talk about the Scoville heat scale. A lot of people have heard of that scale, and that's the scale that you use to rate the degree of pungency or spiciness of a pepper. And it was created by a person named Scoville back in the 1920s, and it is based on human perceptions of spiciness or pungency. And the heat and spiciness of peppers is mostly due to a single compound, along with a few other things, but a lot of people know that compound is called capsaicin. And that's the chemical structure for any of you nerds out there. And capsaicin is responsible for the heat you feel when you eat a hot pepper, a chili pepper. The way capsaicin works is that it interacts with a protein receptor on cell membranes in your skin or mucous membranes, and it more or less activates. These are pain receptors. These receptors can be activated by heat, by stress, by chemical compounds like capsaicin. This receptor is often called the capsaicin receptor because capsaicin binds it so efficiently and triggers the pain response. This receptor can also be triggered by things that also plant chemical compounds that people find spicy, like wasabi or spicy mustards. Heat itself, high temperatures can trigger this pain receptor. This receptor gets sensitized by those kinds of stimuli, and it can also become desensitized by repeated exposure to those stimuli. And so that's why after a period of time people become acclimated to pepper spices or wasabi and can eat hotter and hotter peppers with less and less ill effect. So those champion pepper eaters you might see out there that eat the hottest peppers in the world, they have pain receptors that essentially are very insensitive to capsaicin, but likely very insensitive to other things that stimulate pain, like heat and mustard. So, and in fact, there can be a cross talk between pathways there, where desensitization to capsaicin can desensitize you to heat and things like that as well. So capsaicin has been used and has been explored as a way to reduce chronic pain in folks. You know, you put it in spicy rubs and so forth, and it eventually can help you tolerate pain better. So anyhow, that's just some of the details. Back to the way you measure spiciness of peppers with this Scoville heat unit. Again, this was something created by Scoville to through the use of the human sense of taste and sensation to characterize capsaicin levels in peppers. You can of course measure capsaicin using biochemical instrumentation, but not your average consumer or food producer is not going to do that usually. So this scale was developed that can, in relation to human tastes, that most people can conceptualize, okay, and understand that Scoville heat unit of 0 is going to be an extremely mild pepper, where 1 in the millions is going to be an exceedingly spicy pepper. All right, so enough of those details. Let's take a look at our variation amongst these pepper varieties we have here. And not only do we have different varieties of pepper, we have 3 different species of pepper here in front of me. Okay, and I'm going to start with the one that most people are most familiar with, and this is a bell pepper. This happens to be one that turns a shade of yellow or orange when it ripens. Other varieties will turn red, and most green bell peppers are just less ripe peppers, frankly, and they will eventually turn yellow or red as they mature and ripen. Now, this common bell pepper, which I think is the way most of us, at least in the US, get introduced to peppers, was actually originated in Europe. All these pepper species have Central and South American origins. Okay, but they've been transported around the world, and different varieties have been bred in different places depending on local tastes and needs. So the bell pepper, the most common pepper, was actually produced in Europe, in Hungary, in the 1920s, and it's the only pepper, more or less, that does not make capsaicin. In fact, it contains a mutant gene, a recessive gene, excuse me, so it does not make capsaicin. So it has a Scoville heat unit of 0. That's our baseline. It's completely mild and sweet. Another name for bell peppers is sweet peppers, and so there you have it. Okay, very mild European variety of pepper. Okay, so now this pepper next to it is just illustrating some of the variation in morphology, the shape and that these peppers have been bred to acquire. And so this is also a sweet pepper. This is a pepper with no capsaicin in it, but it just has been bred to have a different shape, which just, makes it a little bit more interesting in culinary usage and so forth. Okay, you can see this one turns a little bit more orange as well, rather than more yellowish like this one. Okay, so those are both sweet peppers, not hot at all, not spicy at all. Okay, the next pepper is an Asian cultivar, and this is called a shishito pepper. Now, shishitos are interesting. The way you typically eat these things, by the way, the way we eat them, is to saute them with some olive oil in a pan for just a few minutes. They blister a little bit on the skin, and you just take them out and you eat the whole thing, leaving the stem behind. So these are delicious peppers. One thing I've noticed, they're very low on the Scoville heat unit scale. They only rank anywhere from no capsaicin up to about a 200 on the Scoville heat unit scale. But we have found that there's quite a bit of variation between individual peppers. So in a handful of shishitos that you might acquire or grow, some of them seem to be very mild, have virtually no capsaicin, while some of them have some spiciness, enough to, trigger that pain reaction, but not very much. They're still very mild. So very delicious, small pepper, best sauteed in olive oil, a little salt and pepper, and that's all you need. Okay, shishitos. Okay, the next one has a little bit more spice to it, and this is commonly called a banana pepper. Okay, they're long, pointy, very yellow-green, light yellow-green, and with just a little bit of spiciness. They have a Scoville heat unit of about 500. And so even though they're not that hot, I remember eating a lot of these, or being asked to eat a lot of these as a kid out of the garden growing up. And they would add enough spiciness to a dish as a little kid to bother me, for sure, at that time. So for an adult who's experienced with peppers, they're still fairly mild. Again, 500 on the Scoville heat units. But for a kid would find this pepper fairly spicy. Okay, so that's a banana pepper. Okay, the next two actually are Italian varieties of pepper. I should add too, before I go on, all the species I've discussed with you so far, along with several more to come, are in the species Capsicum annuum. And so peppers are in the same family as tomatoes and potatoes and eggplant. That's the Solanaceae. That's the family. And this genus is Capsicum. The species is annuum. So the most mild and somewhat spicy peppers are Capsicum annuum. All right, so this next one though, these two varieties were Italian bred varieties. This one's called a Cubanelle. Not Cuban, it's Italian in origin. And it looks somewhat like the, just this long sweet pepper, but this one has some spice to it. This has some heat up to about 1,000 Scoville heat units. So this is a popular pepper that would be used in Italy in cooking. Okay, looks a lot like a long sweet pepper, but it has spice to it. And the next one is simply called an Italian long hot pepper. Okay, this one's kind of interesting just in the way it looks. It's very wrinkly. This pepper is not dried up or anything, but it has a very wrinkly texture, unique twisting morphology to it. Makes it very, interesting and almost scary looking. But it has a Scoville heat unit of 1,000 as well, just like the Cubanelle. So this is an Italian long hot. Again, these are green now, but you can see this one is developing tinges of red. It would redden up as it further ripens. And they're about midway, still a fairly mild but somewhat spicy pepper. All right, the next one is a Poblano. Okay, so these would be more Spanish or Mexican varieties of pepper, and these ones are very often used to make chili relleno, which is, you would split this open and stuff it with a mixture of cheese and spices and things like that and roast them. Okay, so Poblano is also not that hot, but is about 1,500 on the Scoville heat unit scale. Okay, very dark green morphology, and you can eat them fresh like this, roasted often, or let them dry. Really any of these hot peppers, you can eat them fresh or dry them, dry the flesh, use the seeds. A lot of the capsaicin, by the way, is in the tissue, the flesh surrounding the seeds. So either the seeds themselves, the surrounding material, the whitish tissue that you see inside the cavity of the pepper, that's where a lot of the capsaicin is. It's not so much in the flesh or the skin of the pepper itself. It's in those kinds of whitish tissues that you see inside the pepper and covering the seeds. So that's the hot stuff. All right, the next one I'm going to show you a couple examples of, because most people see this pepper and think jalapeno, which is true. Okay, the green version of it. So they're picked green like this, sliced often. You can pickle these peppers, what have you, and jalapeno is very commonly used in Mexican cooking, Mexican dishes, things like that. You can also stuff them, right? But when they ripen, they look like this. So this is also a jalapeno out of the garden here, and they're nice and red. Okay, so that's also a jalapeno. Generally, I would say that as these peppers ripen, they get a little bit more mild. That's my experience in terms of the spiciness. All right, we'll get back eventually to what the spice is there for in the first place. Okay, so jalapenos, just sort of less mature and more mature. Okay, jalapenos, by the way, now we're getting into more serious spice. They rank about 8,000 on the Scoville heat units. Okay, so they're substantially more spicy than, say, this next one down. Obviously, I'm not showing you the wide variety, the dozens of peppers that exist out there. I think I have 11 or 12 here for you, but it kind of covers a nice range, all right? Okay, the next one that really jumps up in heat units is this, and it looks a lot like this jalapeno, has a little bit of a different shape to it, and this is a serrano pepper. Okay, and with this serrano pepper, we take a real leap forward, it's about 3 times more spicy than a jalapeno at 23,000 Scoville heat units. What I'm giving you is kind of the upper end of spiciness for each variety. There's always going to be a range. They're not all that level, but that's what they can reach. So Serranos would give you a punch. And I can't say, this is one that I can't say I've necessarily eaten directly or in a dish that I'm aware of. So I'm interested in trying that one soon. Okay, the next, again, we're going to double the Scoville heat units. And again, I'm going to show you the pepper in its less mature form and in its more mature form. Okay, so these are cayenne peppers. And cayenne peppers, as many of you know, are typically used dried. So you would dry these, and they hang and they last for a long time, and you can crush them up, use the flakes, use the seeds for spicing up your chili and whatever, however you want to use it. Okay, they all do the same thing. Capsaicin does the same thing. The different flavor profiles you get of these different peppers is just sort of the ratio of capsaicin to other compounds that are in the pepper, and proteins and carbohydrates and sugars and all those things. So those all contribute to the flavor profile, and that profile will also change with cooking as you roast them or saute them or boil them or pickle them or whatever you might do with them. So again, we've jumped up quite a bit. This is 50,000 Scoville heat units. And this is where I'm anxious to not really touch these things. I wear contacts, so I often pay the price of not washing my hands well enough, taking out my contacts or putting them in and just, nailing my eyes, which is not fun. Okay, so everything we've seen up to this point is the species Capsicum annuum. The last two, which are super hot varieties, are different species. So variety is not synonymous with species. Species is a whole other genetic, a less related form of a pepper, where a variety is the same species but just different variations of that same species. So the first one I'm going to show you is a bird's eye pepper. There are Thai versions of this. There are African versions of this. There are Filipino versions of this. And this is a different species altogether. This is Capsicum frutescens. And one thing about these peppers is these small peppers are born upright. They point to the sky on the plant. That gives these peppers a very ornamental appearance. They're small plants with green, orange, yellow, red peppers on them. And they're just beautiful to look at. Okay, some of them are longer and skinnier. This one is pretty small. There are different varieties like Pekin peppers and just a number of different varieties of this species. But this is a different species now, okay, than these other peppers we looked at. So this Thai pepper has a Scoville heat unit of 100,000 Scoville heat units. Okay, twice as high as the cayenne. So this is one I don't want to handle and crush and get too many juices on my fingers before I handle other things. And that brings me to the last one, which I'll handle quickly with my hands. It's the hottest pepper we have in the backyard here. We grew it in a pot. Okay, and that's this one. It's a habanero. Okay, habaneros go up to about 350,000 Scoville heat units, over 3 times as high as these Thai hots. And this is one that, for me at least, I'm not overly desensitized to capsaicin, so I could only eat a small sliver of this without choking. Okay, other people who are, desensitized will pop this whole thing in and chew it up and swallow. Some of the winners of these hot pepper contests, they typically they're just very desensitized, or they're genetically desensitized. They have mutant genes for these pain receptors, And basically, to put it simply, they can't feel pain the same way a typical person, a normal, with normal pain receptors can. So that helps you win hot pepper contests. So, all right, so that's our range. We go from 0 to 350,000 Scoville heat units. This is also now, this habanero, by the way, is another species. It's called Capsicum chinense. So it's a different species altogether, and our hottest pepper species out there are all, or varieties are all members of that species, Capsicum chinense. All right, now, I don't have an example of this. I've grown a few other hotter peppers than this in the backyard, like Scotch bonnets or scorpion peppers. But the hottest pepper in the world now, there's some contenders for the crown, but is one originating in China called Pepper X. And to give you an idea, this habanero is 350,000 Scoville heat units. Pepper X is 3 times that level of heat. 3 million Scoville heat units or so. So I can't even fathom taking even a tiniest sliver of that pepper and trying to eat it. It's just insane. I mean, the development of some of these cultivars, it's partly just for fun, to produce the hottest peppers in the world. But, if you're a hot sauce maker, it really cuts down on the number of peppers you need to get the capsaicin that you require to make a hot chili sauce. So Pepper X, I've never tried it. I have tried Scotch bonnets and Carolina Reapers. You might have heard of those, or up there in the same species. I've tried those, and trust me, I tried the smallest sliver of those things, and I sought higher ground pretty quickly. So that's a little bit about peppers. Just to finish it out is a little lesson about why capsaicin is in these species in the first place. Well, it's a defense. It's a defense largely against mammals. It doesn't, make a lot of sense to produce a beautiful fruit like this and have it entirely eaten and all the seeds destroyed by a mammal before some of those seeds got spread around and germinated and turned into new plants. So a lot of wild peppers are, first of all, they're pretty small. Okay, wild peppers are, often like that, or small peppers that are typically dispersed by birds, because birds can eat these things, and birds are not sensitive to capsaicin the way that mammals are. So we use capsaicin as humans in a lot of ways, as pain relievers, as a spice, as medicines, as repellents. Think bear repellents or mace, because mammals sense that, and it repels, we react to it strongly. Birds don't. So birds are the primary seed dispersers of wild peppers, and the capsaicin is there to ward off the damaging mammals, allowing the birds to eat them, move them around, and dump the seeds out somewhere else where they can then grow. So capsaicin, like so many other chemicals in foods that we use as, in foods or plants in general, that we use as drugs or medicines or spices or flavorings, many of these things are there as defenses, okay? Anti-herbivore defenses. So thank goodness for evolution and, the evolution of these sort of phytochemicals for providing things for us as humans to exploit and enjoy and utilize in ways that evolution probably never predicted. All right, and with that, I am looking across the camera at a hummingbird at a feeder here, getting a last little taste today because it's getting dark. And I'm going to sign off as the naturalist until next time. And before I go, remember to subscribe, to like, to comment, to keep this thing going. All right, take care. Bye-bye.